When Miss Sang Qianqian was 18 years old, she fell in love with Shen Hanyu at first sight. Shen Hanyu, I like you. But I don't like you. Shen Han spoke mercilessly, his words resounding, not now, not in the future. In a fit of anger, the young lady planned to teach Shen Hanyu a lesson. But it was discovered that Shen Hanyu might be a violent and cruel tycoon in the future, and could even cause the destruction of the Sang family. Sang Qianqian rolled around casually. She couldn't afford the big shot, so it was better to die and run away. Shen Hanyu once had a strong hatred towards Sang Qianqian, but after she left, he was obsessed with almost madness. Sang Qianqian, who was far away from home, lived a carefree life. One day, I suddenly heard that the business tycoon Shen Han had dug up her grave like crazy criticism and searched for her everywhere. Sang Qianqian's heart sounded an alarm. As soon as he packed up, he had to run away. As the door opened, Shen stood outside with a dark face, gritting his teeth and saying, "Run, you keep running." Sang Qianqian turned cautiously. Since he couldn't escape, why not try to influence the big shot? As a result, the persuasion failed and I even got involved. Years later, upon discovering that he had been deceived, Sang Qianqian left the divorce agreement in front of Shen Hanyu and said, "I want a divorce." Shen Han embraced the person and lowered his head to cover the girl's lips. After a long time, the mute voice asked, "Are you still away?" Sang Qianqian felt dizzy from being kissed and said, "No, we won't leave. That's called husband. Old man, husband." Shen Hanyu nodded with satisfaction and said, well behaved. Keywords of the novel. After failing to persuade a violent big shot, I was lured into marriage without a pop-up window. After failing to persuade a violent big shot, I was lured into marriage. Download the complete text. After failing to persuade a violent big shot, I was lured into marriage. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Terrifying Nightmares. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Terrifying Nightmares. Miss, it's. Uncle Zhong, the old butler, suddenly pointed ahead and stuttered as he spoke, his voice terrifying to the extreme. Sang Qianqian looked up and saw in the dim morning light, on the top floor of the 7-story villa in Sang Family Manor, a figure like a broken kite rapidly falling and hitting the ground heavily. Blood splattered everywhere, and Sang Qianqian's hurried footsteps suddenly froze, causing a dimness before his eyes. Her world suddenly collapsed in that moment. "Dad!" The heart-wrenching cries echoed through the quiet manor in the early morning, startling the birds in the garden to soar. Sang Qianqian stumbled and pounced, her legs weak, kneeling in front of her father Sang Pengcheng, crying uncontrollably. "Miss, I'm afraid the master has no choice but to take this path. The group owes a huge amount of debt and the funding chain is broken." Uncle Zhong burst into tears and said, "Yesterday the old man was on the phone all day, making his voice hoarse. But there isn't a bank or a company, so he's willing to borrow money to help the old man get through this difficult time." Sang's shallow tears surged out like broken beads, causing her liver and intestines to ache every inch and almost fainting. Yesterday, when her father suddenly called her and said he had sent her some money to live a good life abroad, she knew that there must be something hidden from her father. She bought a plane ticket to return to China overnight, but in the end, she was still one step late. Sang Qianqian couldn't help but sob and said, "The group has been operating well, how could the funding chain suddenly break? It's all Shen Hanyu's fault. It's him who set a trap for the Sang family, he deliberately targeted the Sang family, and caused such a disaster." Uncle Zhong's voice became increasingly angry. All of this was caused by Shen Hanyu. He returned to Mingqing this time to seek revenge on the Sang family. Shen Hanyu, Shen Hanyu. These 3 words have been awakened from the depths of distant memories. Is it him who has returned? The sound of steady footsteps came, and a faint figure walked slowly towards her. Sang Qianqian looked up and through her hazy tears, she saw a man. A man dressed in a well-cut black suit, emitting a chilly aura from head to toe, with an unusually handsome appearance but unusually cold eyes, was quietly looking at her from a high position. She knows this person, but it seems she doesn't know him. He is not the Qin Jun boy in her memory with black pants and white shirt. He is Shen Hanyu, the founder of Phoenix, a world telecommunications giant who left Mingqing for several years and returned to Mingqing to seek revenge for the Shen family. Not far behind Shen Hanyu stood Uncle Zhong, who was stopped by several black bodyguards and could not come over. Uncle Zhong wiped away his tears with a mournful expression. The Sang family courtyard is now his. All assets under the name of the Sang family have been seized and auctioned off, even the old house is no exception. The buyer is Shen Hanyu. However, in a short period of time, the Sang family had already changed. The industry that has been painstakingly managed by generations, and the reputation of the Sang family in the business world, has all been destroyed and turned into dust. Sang Qianqian slowly stood up, feeling immense grief and prolonged crying, making her dizzy and almost falling. The man timely reached out to support her, his arms steady and strong. She pushed him away with a pale face and gritted her teeth. Why? Why do you treat my father like this? The man stared at her expressionlessly, with a pair of dark, bottomless eyes like a pool of broken ice floating in winter. His voice was extremely low and cold. Why don't you ask yourself? Sang Qianqian was stunned for a moment. The almost forgotten memories of her youth gradually came to her mind, and she instantly fell into an ice cave. Years ago, she liked Shen Hanyu, but Shen Hanyu refused her confession. In a fit of anger, she called her father and cried. In order to vent her anger, her father forced Shen Hanyu to drop out of school and leave Mingqing, using means to bankrupt the Shen family company. Shen Hanyu's father was greatly stimulated and died soon after experiencing a sudden cerebral hemorrhage, while Shen Hanyu was nowhere to be found. Who could have imagined that now Shen Hanyu has become a business tycoon and will return to Ming City, returning several times what was once the legacy of the Sang family and the Shen family. So in the end, it turned out that she herself had harmed her father and the Sang family. So, are you retaliating against the Sang family because of me? Said Sang with a trembling voice. The man lowered his gaze at her, his pitch-black eyes carrying an indescribable meaning. Sang Qianqian, he said word for word, I've been looking for you for a long time. The man's voice was extremely low magnetic, but it carried a frosty coldness. Listening to Sang Qianqian's ear, he felt a shiver of fear. Has he been looking for her for a long time? Because she couldn't be found or retaliated against, that's why all the hatred was vented on the Sang family. What happened back then was that I apologized to you. Shen Hanyu, the person you hate is me. You shouldn't, said Sang Qianqian with tears streaming down her face as she spoke. She choked up and couldn't continue. What should not be done? Shouldn't it involve the Sang family? Shouldn't it harm her father? But back then, the Sang family treated the Shen family like this. Sang Qianqian was completely confused, feeling like he was having a nightmare. But her father's cold and stiff body, as well as the dry dark blood on the ground, reminded her that this was not a dream, but a cruel and bloody reality. She wanted to say something, but couldn't say it. She wanted to cry, as if her heart was blocked by a huge stone, and she couldn't even make a sound. Sang Qianqian's body trembled violently, and his eyes darkened as he fainted. When she regained consciousness, her person, for some reason, ended up in prison. Through the thick visiting glass, Sang Qianqian saw Wensu wearing prison clothes and with shackles on his hands. Wensu is the closest person to her besides her father and brother. They have been playing since childhood, and Wensu calls her Qianjie. They are not siblings, they are like siblings. The heroic young man in my memory, with clear facial features and a soaring spirit, was now haggard in appearance, with an indelible sense of melancholy between his eyebrows and eyes. His eyes were like ashes that had been extinguished, devoid of any vitality. Wensu was originally the CEO of a film and television company, but he was falsely accused and involved in a rape scandal. Not only was he ruined, but he was also punished by the court for several crimes such as illegal business operations, tax evasion, etc. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison and fined billions. The company went bankrupt completely. The only person who can cause such a tragedy to Wen-su is Shen Hanyu. Except for him, no one can make the walls of Sangwon's two families fall overnight, and everyone pushes them. Sang Qianqian came out of prison and went directly to Shen Hanyu's company. She wanted to beg him to let Wen-su go, regardless of the cost. But she couldn't see Shen Hanyu, but she was forcibly sent to a madhouse by several people in black. "Mr. Shen doesn't want to see you." Someone spoke to her, her face blurry in the misty smoke, unable to see clearly, but her tone carried a cruel connotation. "Sang Qianqian, you should spend the rest of your life here. This can also be considered Shen's last kindness to you." However, that was not kindness, it was even more terrifying torture than Ling Qi. On a night full of thunder and rain, Sang Qianqian embarked on the same tragic ending as her father. Jumping down from the 13th floor of a mental hospital, blood splattering on a rainy night, and dying without closing her eyes, Sang Qianqian suddenly flipped over and sat up, with intense fear gripping her heart. She was gasping for breath, sweating profusely on her forehead, and a terrifying scene from her dream still lingered in her mind. 1v1, double cleanliness, super pet, chasing wife. The beginning is just a suspense, and the male lead is extremely affectionate. The female lead is a growth type and likes many cute little ones. Collect and vote for support. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Mrs. Confession Rejected. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Mrs. Confession Rejected. That dream was so real that when she remembered it, her heart tightened and her hair stood on end. The scenes of her father's tragic death, Wen-su's imprisonment, and her suicide by jumping off a building are vivid in my memory. For a moment, she really thought she was dead. The evening sunset shone through the window, and outside the window, a tree of roses bloomed brightly, with a faint floral fragrance in the air. The chaotic memories in his mind calmed down a bit, and Sang looked around lightly, gradually regaining his rationality. Although it was just a dream, the problem was that she really liked Shen Hanyu and mustered the courage to confess to him. And Shen Hanyu, like in a dream, refused her confession. All of this happened at noon today. She knew Shen Hanyu was playing basketball and originally wanted to give him a private signed version of a well-known foreign basketball star. However, as soon as she stepped into class, she saw him sitting side by side with Xia Sidong, looking down to talk. He is giving a lecture for Xia Sidong, with a tone of patience and gentleness that Sang Qianqian has never seen before. Sang Qianqian watched them silently for a long time, until Xia Sidong took out a box of small dim sum from the table bucket and said shyly, "Here you are." Dim sum vary in size, and she added in a low voice, "I made them myself, so don't give them up." Shen Hanyu hesitated for a moment, but he reached out to pick up the dim sum. Sang Qianqian once gave Shen Hanyu many expensive gifts, but he never accepted one. However, when Xia Sidong gave him such an unremarkable gift, he accepted it. Sang Qianqian couldn't control his young lady's temper and threw the basketball in his hand directly. She didn't want to smash Xia Sidong, she just wanted to stop Shen Hanyu from receiving that box of dim sum. Xia Sidong saw her coming and got up in panic, wanting to leave. The basketball coincidentally brushed against her cheek. She covered her face and began to sob softly. Shen Han stood up and stood in front of Xia Sidong, with a black face and a stern voice, saying, "Sang Qianqian, are you crazy?" No one has ever dared to speak to Sang Qianqian like this, but Sang Qianqian didn't care about his attitude. She looked at him and tried to restrain her emotions, saying, "Shen Hanyu, I don't like you getting so close to Xia Sidong. Whoever I come close to is my freedom. Sang Qianqian, have you had enough of this over a month? Can this farce come to an end here?" Shen Hanyu said with a hint of anger on his face upon hearing the words farce. Sang Qianqian was stunned. Over the past month, she has been lowering her profile and putting in all sorts of effort to be good to him. In his eyes, is it just a farce? Sang Qianqian was both sad and sad, with red circles around his eyes. Shen Hanyu, do you really not understand? I like you. But I don't like you. Shen Han's face was covered with a layer of frost, and he said mercilessly, not now, not in the future. After speaking, he turned to Xia Sidong and said, I'll take you to the medical room. Sang Qianqian watched as they walked out of the classroom side by side, and all the classmates around her silently watched her. She felt as if she was on fire in her heart, with flames blazing high above her head. Sang Qianqian felt that she might really be crazy. She rushed over and grabbed Shen Hanyu, shouting loudly, You're not allowed to accompany her. Shen Han gave her a cold glance and mercilessly shook her off. Sang Qianqian's lower back collided with the desk, causing her to ouch and her small face to furrow in pain. Shen Hanyu's footsteps paused, and his gaze fell on her face for only 1 or 2 seconds, but he still left without mercy. He really left her and accompanied Xia Sidong away. From childhood to adulthood, the people around Sang Qianqian were all respectful and obedient. She had never missed anything, only Shen Hanyu allowed her to taste the extreme feeling of defeat. The silent gaze of her classmates fell on Sang Qianqian, like sharp needles piercing her body, causing her to feel uncomfortable all over, and the area where her back was hit was also burning with pain. In a fit of anger, she called her father Sang Pengcheng and said, Dad, Shen Hanyu is bullying me. I never want to see him again. After finishing the phone call, she didn't even attend afternoon classes and went straight home. She cried in her room for a while before falling into a deep sleep. Unexpectedly, she had such a terrible dream. Making that phone call to my father was just a moment of impatience, and I didn't want to lose face in front of my classmates. I did think about giving Shen Hanyu a lesson. But with her father's temperament, there won't be just one lesson. Sang Qianqian quickly got up, and in the mirror, her eyes were slightly swollen with tear stains. She quickly washed her face and went downstairs restlessly, ready to personally visit her father's company. Unexpectedly, his father Sang Pengcheng has returned and is chatting with Sang Qianqian's brother Sang Minglang in the living room. Sang Pengcheng is in his 50s this year, with a rosy complexion, bright and lively eyes, and a calm and confident demeanor. Sang Minglang is about 25.6 years old, with a straight suit and a pair of silver-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose. He has a gentle and elegant demeanor. Upon hearing footsteps, the two of them looked up at the same time, and Sang Pengcheng's face showed a smile. Shallow, come over quickly. He patted the sofa and gestured for Sang Qianqian to sit down next to him. Dad, why did you and your brother come back so early today? Sang Qianqian asked. They are usually busy in the company until very late before coming back. Someone bullied my daughter, of course we have to come back early. Sang Pengcheng looked affectionately at his daughter and said, I heard that this foolish girl of mine publicly confessed to someone today, but was rejected on the spot. Sang Qianqian blushed and said, Dad, how could you inquire about my personal matters? Sang Pengcheng smiled and said, when I received your call, my dad's heart was in turmoil. I still have to understand why that kid from the Shen family bullied my daughter. He couldn't help but feel a bit uncomfortable after letting people understand him. Sang Qianqian's mother passed away early, and his daughter was the lifeblood of Sang Pengcheng. From childhood to adulthood, she was doted on by him and cared for by him. Sometimes, it was simply a lack of principle and bottom line to ask the stars not to give to the moon. More than a month ago, Sang Qianqian gave up studying abroad and insisted on transferring from the best international school in Mingqing to Mingqing High School. Although Sang Pengcheng did not agree, he still agreed. He only found out now that his daughter did this to protect Shen Han. It's rare for a daughter to reach the age of love and truly like someone, yet still be hurt so mercilessly by the other person. How could a father not feel heartbroken? Speaking of which, that kid from the Shen family dares to look down on his daughter like this, it's really disrespectful. Sang Qianqian rubbed Sang's shallow hair and said softly, some of my daughters are liked by people, not just him. Don't worry, that kid from the Shen family dropped out of school this afternoon, and you won't see him again in the future. Not just Shen Hanyu, Sang Minglang smiled and continued, it won't be long before even the Shen family can establish themselves in Mingcheng. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Will no longer pester you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 will no longer pester you. Sang Qianqian's breath froze and he said, what do you mean by this, brother? We were originally discussing cooperation with the Shen family company. Sang Minglang's gaze flickered coldly behind the lenses. Shen Xiaofeng refused to accept the investment from the Sang family due to his lack of salt and oil. Now that everything is good, it's time to tear apart his face and let them go bankrupt before making a purchase. Shen Xiaofeng is the father of Shen Hanyu. The mobile chip technology developed by Shen Xiaofeng has been favored by the Sang family, as they have always wanted to invest in Shen's company, but have been repeatedly rejected. Do we have to let the Shen family go bankrupt? Said Sang Qianqian for a moment. It was originally unnecessary, but my daughter can't let the Shen family bully her for nothing. Sang Pengcheng lightly patted Sang Qianqian's hand and said, you don't have to worry about things in the mall. With your brother around, he knows the right balance. Sang Qianqian felt a bit chilly in his heart. The tragedy in her dream is still deeply engraved in her mind. However, reality unexpectedly coincided with the dream she had, and the Shen family could really go bankrupt. That dream, perhaps a reminder to her, reminding the Sang family not to be so extreme towards the Shen family. Without hesitation, Sang Qianqian told his brother and father about the dream. Is Shen Hanyu a global business giant in the future? Sang Minglang was so funny, you look up to him too much. It's not that my brother is shameless. The company that was acquired by the Sang family, how can there be room for a comeback? I'm not afraid of 10,000, just in case. Sang Qianqian stubbornly said, if the Shen family company develops and grows in the future, wouldn't we have an unnecessary enemy? Sang Pengcheng didn't take it seriously and smiled, after all, it was a dream. How could it be taken seriously? Sang Qianqian felt helpless and had to resort to a different approach. But Shen Hanyu is actually my classmate. I don't want to make too much of a fuss with him. She took Sang Pengcheng's hand and coquettishly said, Dad, just promise me not to make things difficult for the Shen family, okay? The daughter's demeanor fell into the eyes of Sang Pengcheng, but she actually thought she still liked Shen Hanyu. Sang Pengcheng sighed and his eyes were full of indulgence. Okay. The person my daughter finally fell in love with, my dad will help you catch him no matter what. I'll have your brother rearrange it now. To make things difficult for the Shen family is to vent her anger on her daughter. Now that her daughter is more satisfied and still has interest in that kid, he can only follow her naturally. Who said he only has such a precious daughter? Sang Qianqian said, Did Dad misunderstand something? Sang Minglang couldn't help but say, Dad, how will the Shen family handle it? Strive for cooperation as much as possible, let's put aside the acquisition plan for now. Sang Pengcheng spoke, which was a decisive decision. Although Sang Minglang had no choice but to listen. The next day, Sang Qianqian hurried to the school. Taking a big step upstairs, she suddenly saw the figure walking down at the corner of the stairs, and she froze in place. Surprisingly, it's Shen Hanyu. Sang Qianqian felt a flurry in her heart. She was completely unprepared and unexpectedly met him in a narrow path. Shen Hanyu seemed to have never expected to encounter Sang Qianqian. He paused and his cold gaze fell on Sang Qianqian from above. At this glance, it was like the man in black who looked at Sang Qianqian in his dream last night. Although it was early summer and the warm sun was shining outside the window, Sang Qianqian could only feel a chilling sensation rushing up his spine, causing him to shiver. Shen Han walked slowly down the stairs. Sang instinctively leaned against the wall to make way for him. At the moment when the two of them looked at each other, the girl's body visibly stiffened, seeming to be a bit scared. Her big eyes flickered with panic, but she still managed to squeeze out a smile with a hint of flattery. Afraid. Please. When these two words appeared in his mind, Shen Han sneered, how could they be? The words flattery and fear should not be related to her. Shen Han stared at her expressionlessly and slowly said, Sang Qianqian. These three words were called out by him, as if they had been quenched with ice, carrying a chill, just like the man in yesterday's dream calling her name. Sang Qianqian's body trembled slightly. I don't care what your ideas are, but if you think you can keep me, you can make me accept you. That's just a pipe dream. His tone was tinged with a hint of cold sarcasm. The tactic of indulging in hard to get is useless to me. Sang Qianqian bit his lip and puffed up his brave voice, I'm sorry, Shen Hanyu. It's my fault this time. In the future, I won't bother you anymore, nor will I make things difficult for you. Shen Han was slightly stunned, with a pair of dark and cold eyes that were emotionally indistinguishable. However, the sincere expression on Sang Qianqian's face showed no signs of hypocrisy. He stared at Sang Qianqian for a while before coldly saying, it's best that way. Shen Han walked away, and the oppressive feeling in the air finally disappeared. Sang Qianqian finally let go of his tense nerves. Thinking of herself for over a month, she had a liking for Shen Hanyu as if she had been possessed by evil. She felt inexplicable in her heart and stood silently for a while. Shen Hanyu may never know why she likes him. Actually, even she didn't know why she fell in love with him at first sight. Inexplicably, I remembered him at just one glance. That day was her 18th birthday, and her father held a grand coming-of-age ceremony for her at a 7-star hotel in Mingcheng. The banquet had not yet ended when she suddenly had a sudden impulse and pulled up her hair. Wen Su sneaked out and rode in an open-top sports car on the street. The night was clear, the moonlight was clear, and the spring breeze at night was filled with the fragrance of flowers. She sang happily like a child, and her long black hair fluttered in the wind. Then she turned her head and saw the handsome young man wearing a white shirt and black pants under the street light at the bus stop. That was a face that could be described as confusing sentient beings, calm and cold, as cool as jade, and handsome as a heavenly god under the dim yellow road lights. Sang Qianqian forgot to sing and stared at him foolishly without blinking his eyes. The boy heard the roaring sound of the car engine and looked up, his eyes indifferent, in the direction of Sang Qianqian. The sports car swept past the young man with a fleeting glance. However, it did not prevent Sang Qianqian from remembering the school plaque on the shirt on the boy's chest. Mingcheng High School. Sang Qianqian transferred from an international school to Mingcheng High School the next day. For over a month now, she has clumsily tried to be kind to Shen Han in her own way, but he would rather ruin his future than accept her, which shows his hatred towards her. Fortunately, that dream alerted Sang Qianqian, otherwise she wouldn't have known how long she would have indulged in this unrequited love affair. She has been deviating from her life for too long, and now it's time to return to her track. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Endless Meeting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Endless Meeting. Sang Qianqian returned to the classroom and did not go to his seat, but sat next to Wen Su. Previously, in order to get close to Shen Hanyu, she deliberately made a table mate with him. But now, of course, we can no longer sit next to each other. A little closer to him, one would think of the dream from last night and get goosebumps all over. Wen Su was a bit confused. Sister Qian, what exactly is the situation? When Sang Qianqian transferred to another school, Wen Su also came along. However, in order to sit with Shen Hanyu, she mercilessly abandoned him. Why did she suddenly change her mind now? There's not much going on, I just feel it's unnecessary. There are so many men in this world, and he doesn't like me, so there's no need for me to like him, Sang Qian said lightly when Su was stunned and then overjoyed. You've figured it out, Sister Qian. He had known Sang Qianqian since kindergarten, and only Sang Qianqian had been pursued for so many years. This was the first time he had seen Sang Qianqian lowering his profile to pursue someone, but he still didn't appreciate it. To be honest, besides that good-looking face, what's good about Shen Hanyu? I can't even match Sister Qian at all, okay? When Su happily went to move the books for Sang Qianqian, Shen Hanyu didn't even move his eyebrows, as if it had nothing to do with who Sang Qianqian was sitting with. Fortunately, his attitude is now indifferent to Sang Qianqian. Her gaze fell on the side of Shen Hanyu's face, where Xia Sidong had applied a bandage, feeling a slight apology in her heart. During lunch break, Sang Qianqian took Wen Su to the mall and bought 40 sets of pure gold carved bookmarks with gold rankings. Then, he went to a certain brand store to buy a valuable limited edition wireless Bluetooth earphone, and also bought 40 cups of milk tea. When I came back, it was very dark and a rainstorm was coming. Sister, can I ask, what are you doing when you buy these things? Wen Su carried a bunch of things in both hands and followed behind Sang Qianqian, completely confused about what medicine was sold in Sang Qianqian's gourd. Although he knew that Sang Qianqian always had her reasons for doing things, today's actions were really strange. Sang said calmly, the apology ceremony. Wen Su. Compensation, apology ceremony. To whom do we apologize? Shen Hanyu. Who will tell him what happened to his sister Qian? However, when he knew what Sang Qianqian wanted, he immediately admired Sang Qianqian with admiration. When it comes to being a good person and doing things, it's still his superficial and grandiose sister who has no choice. 40 cups of milk tea and 40 sets of pure gold bookmarks were quickly placed on each student's seat. On Xia Sidong's desk, there is also an unopened brand new earphone. When walking to Shen Hanyu's table, Wen Su heavily placed milk tea and bookmarks on the table before turning his head and saying to a stunned classmate in the classroom. We, Sister Qian, have caused a lot of trouble for everyone during this period. Please have some milk tea as a gesture of apology. The gift is a small gesture of goodwill. I wish everyone good results in the college entrance examination and a successful ranking. Seeing the surprised expressions on the faces of his classmates, as if they had been struck by lightning, Wen Su felt quite relieved and raised his voice, saying. Also, yesterday when Sister Qian confessed to Shen Hanyu, it was just a joke. Now, the joke is over. I hope everyone doesn't take it seriously. After all, how could someone like Sister Qian like any cat or dog? After he finished speaking, he gave Shen Hanyu a sideways glance and expressionlessly lowered his head to read, without lifting his head throughout. Wen Su was so angry in his heart. Damn it, Shen Han couldn't resist anything else. He pretended to be the first place. I really don't know how Sister Qian used to like this stupid thing. He waved his hand gracefully and said, all right, that's all I can say. We'll meet in the future. In the future, each one will go their own way, but don't let Sister Qian meet Shen Hanyu again. When Wen Su left, the class suddenly exploded. Guo Muyang, who has always had a good relationship with Shen Hanyu, asked Shen Hanyu in a low voice, brother, what's going on here? What does it mean to have no future? Shen Han remained indifferent, as if he had not heard of it. Guo Muyang continued to speculate, I heard that Sang Qianqian and Wen Su used to be from an international school. Aren't they going back to their original school? International schools and Mingqing High School are like heaven and earth, and the future will not be endless. Shen Han pursed his thin lips and said, I don't know. In the office. The principal looked at Sang Qianqian and Wen Su with disbelief on his face and said, you guys, are you dropping out? Sang nodded lightly and said, yes. Previously at an international school, she had planned to study abroad, but her plan was postponed for the sake of Shen Hanyu. Now there's no need to stay for Shen Han anymore, she and Wensu can also go abroad earlier. The principal was afraid that the school would do something wrong and offend the young lady. After multiple inquiries, it was found that Sang Qianqian had no objections to the school and had decided to drop out due to personal reasons. While feeling disappointed, he couldn't help but feel even more regretful. The procedures will be completed quickly. Coming out of the principal's office, the outside was already covered in black clouds, and heavy rain was pouring down with a crackling sound. Wensu and Sang Qianqian stood under the eaves watching the rain, both in a good mood. So, can we leave now? Wensu can't wait to leave here. If it weren't for Sang Qianqian, he wouldn't be able to stay here for a day. Of course I can, Sang Qian said with a faint smile as he took out his umbrella from his bag. They were about to leave when they hurriedly went downstairs alone without taking an umbrella, about to rush into the rain. Xia Sitong. Sang Qianqian quickly called out to her, "What are you going to do when it's raining so heavily?" Xia Sitong didn't expect Sang Qianqian to talk to her, and she was clearly a bit surprised. Her fingers tugged unnaturally at the corner of her clothes and muttered, "There's something going on." Sang Qianqian handed her the sunshade umbrella and said, "Here you are." Xia Sitong instinctively declined, "No need." "What are you polite about?" Sang Qianqian glanced at her face. "I'm sorry yesterday, your injury. Are you okay?" Xia Sitong was stunned for a moment, completely unaware that Sang Qianqian would apologize to her. "Not bad, it's just a skin injury," she said as she was about to leave. Sang Qianqian grabbed her and said, "Take the umbrella." Xia Sitong refused to take it, but Wensu became impatient. He grabbed her hand and stuffed the umbrella into her hand, fiercely saying, "If Sister Qian asks you to take it, then take it. Why are you making such a fuss?" At this moment, footsteps could be heard from upstairs. Xia Sitong quickly took the umbrella, and Wensu also released her wrist. However, the scene of their tug-of-war has been fully captured by the visitors. Shen Han strode over to Xia Sitong's side, his black eyes coldly scanning Wensu and Sang Qianqian. His gaze fell on Xia Sitong's red wrist and he said, "Are you okay?" A deep and cold voice with a hint of suspicion landed in Sang Qianqian's ear, causing her body and mind to tremble. Shen Hanyu wouldn't think that she and Wensu were bullying Xia Sitong, right? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Will make the Sang family regret the past. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 will make the Sang family regret the past. Upon hearing Shen Hanyu's words, Xia Sitong shook her head and whispered, "I'm fine. My dad called me." Shen Han said in a deep voice, "I'll accompany you to the hospital." Xia Sitong didn't respond, but couldn't help but glance at Sang Qianqian. Yesterday, Han Yuga only taught her a question, but was forced by the Sang family to drop out of school. If he accompanies her to the hospital again today, Sang Qianqian may not know how to make things difficult for him. "What are you looking at? What do you like to do?" "My sister Qian is too lazy to care about you." Wensu said impatiently, "Even if you're dating Shen Hanyu now, my sister Qian won't frown." Knowing that Sang Qianqian no longer liked Shen Hanyu, Wensu inexplicably felt a sense of pride and confidence in his words. Xia Sitong's face turned red and she didn't speak. Shen Han held an umbrella for her and the two quickly disappeared into the rain and mist. Undoubtedly, his relationship with Xia Sitong is much closer than Sang Qianqian thought, but they never deliberately show it in front of outsiders. Sang Qianqian couldn't express what he felt in his heart. In addition to feeling disappointed and lost, he also felt the ease of getting out of his cage and regaining his freedom. Liking someone is like willingly falling into a cage. Fortunately, now she has let go. "Sister, why are you so polite to them today?" Wensu reached out to touch Sang Qianqian's forehead and said, "You didn't have a fever, did you? Did you just say sorry to Xia Sitong?" Yesterday, Sang Qianqian confessed to Shen Hanyu, but Wensu was not there. When he returned, He heard about Sang Qianqian's rejection and was so angry that he wanted to settle accounts with Shen Hanyu. Unexpectedly, he found out that he had dropped out of school. But when Shen Hanyu arrived this morning, there was nothing wrong with him. On the contrary, it was Sister Qian who had a 180-degree turn in her attitude toward Shen Hanyu and Xia Sidong, and he couldn't figure it out. "What do you know?" "I can bend and stretch," Sang Qian said lightly. When Xuzhang, the second monk, couldn't figure it out and said, "No," in front of Shen Hanyu, "What do you have to do, Sister Qian?" "I told you, but you don't understand. Anyway, in the future, stay away from Shen Hanyu and don't provoke him if you have nothing to do," Sang Qianqian advised. She didn't want to hear Su because she had offended Shen Hanyu, and in the future, she would really be retaliated like in a dream. "What am I doing to provoke him if I have nothing to do?" When Su let out a cut and said, just his iceberg face, "It's like someone owes him 8 million. I find it annoying at first glance." The rain grew heavier, the sky dimmer, and a lightning bolt accompanied by a thunderous roar swept across the sky. Sang Qianqian stepped into the rain, and the cold rain patted his face, giving him a heartfelt pleasure. Those past feelings of first love, joyful, sorrowful, anxious, and melancholic, seemed to have been washed away by this rain. She deliberately picked up a place deep in the water to play with, and her shoes and socks were all wet. When Su went to pull her, and she also said, "Have you seen Peppa Pig? When it rains, Peggy and George will play in the mud." When Su raised his eyebrows and said, "You think you're a pig? You are the pig." Sang Qianqian flew over and kicked Wen Su with a wet face. The two of them were chasing each other in the water and had a lively scene. In the dark rain curtain, someone stepped on the rain and walked over step by step. Sang Qianqian was stunned for a moment, and Shen Han guarded him. Why did he come back? Shen Hanyu had already walked up to her, his pitch black and cold eyes reflecting the distant lights of the teaching building, like a cold star shining in the cold, looking a bit scary. If it weren't for reason telling Sang Qianqian to remain calm, she would almost be unable to resist the urge to flee. "Shen Hanyu, what's wrong with you? Why are you blocking my sister Qian?" When Su rushed over and said, "My sister Qian is no longer interested in you." Shen Hanyu paid no attention to Wen Su, his pitch black and sharp gaze fixed on Sang Qianqian. "Sang Qianqian, I don't know what the Sang family really wants to do. If there's anything, come to me, don't touch my father, don't touch the Xia family." Shen Hanyu's voice was not loud, but there was an invisible sense of oppression, and the chill seeped through. "Otherwise, one day, I will make the Sang family regret it." Although Shen Hanyu in front of him is still a student, he still carries a youthful and bright aura, which is incomparable to the terrifying aura of a completely blackened commercial giant in his dream. But between his eyebrows and eyes, there was already a faint and solemn pressure. Sang Qianqian's body trembled for a moment, not knowing whether it was due to cold or fear. She forced herself to calm down and said, "I don't understand what you mean by that. Since my father promised not to do anything to the Shen family, he would definitely do it." Sang Qianqian didn't know why Shen Hanyu said that. Shen Han said in a cold voice, "Sang Qianqian, you don't need to ask questions clearly, let alone pretend to be a good person in front of Xia Sidong. Grass mud horse. Shen Han, what the hell are you farting?" When Shiqi didn't hit a single spot and reached out to grab Shen Hanyu's collar, saying, "Do you have the guts to repeat what you just said? Believe it or not, I'll beat you to death." Wen Su. A lightning bolt flashed across the sky, illuminating Sang Qianqian's pale face, which had been drenched in rain. Her voice trembled slightly, "Let go of him. Sister Qian, this bastard is threatening you and wrongly accusing you." "I said, let go of him," Sang Qianqian raised his voice. Wen Su was very dissatisfied, but he still let go of Shen Hanyu's collar and gave him a fierce glare. "Shen Hanyu, I don't know what the Sang family has done to make you have such a big opinion of the Sang family." Sang Qianqian said in a soft voice, "I have already completed the dropout procedures today, and you won't see me again in the future. Don't worry, since I said I won't make things difficult for you, let alone let my dad make things difficult for your father and the Xia family. Shen Han said coldly, you'd better keep your promises. After a pause, he said in a deep voice, extend your hand. Sang Qianqian almost instinctively reached out his hand and stuttered, do what? Shen Han, expressionless, stuffed the umbrella back into her hand, turned around and left. His straight back gradually merged with the dim sky and quickly disappeared. Sang Qianqian felt lingering palpitations and a bit uneasy. What exactly does Shen Hanyu's words mean, and what has the Sang family done? Why is it still related to the Xia family? She lost her interest in playing in the water and hurriedly pulled Wen-su out. When Shufei was about to explode with anger. Sister, take a look at Shen Hanyu. Is there anything really awesome about him? I don't understand. What's so scary about Shen Hanyu? Why are you so low profile? Sang Qianqian sighed and said, if I say that we offend Shen Hanyu, our future fate may be very tragic. Do you believe it? Wen-su held back his anger and said, I don't believe it. Sang Qianqian moved his lips, but he still hesitated to speak. If you don't believe it, then don't believe it. Anyway, she will never let the tragedy in her dream happen again. Wen-su probably won't have the possibility of witnessing it in her lifetime. After seeing off Wen-su at home, Sang Qianqian went straight to the Sang Hongyuan group to find his father. She needs to figure out what exactly happened today. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Least Wanted People to Face. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Least Wanted People to Face. Sangjia Hongyuan Group, located in the CEO's office. Sang Pengcheng remained calm and said, what's going on? I told you yesterday that we need to discuss cooperation with the Shen family. Dad, it's the Shen family who went too far in their actions. Shen Xiaofeng's attitude today is clearly stepping on the face of the Sang family under his feet, said Sang Minglang with a black face and a clear suppressed anger today. Sang Minglang personally brought someone to negotiate cooperation with the Shen family company, but Shen Xiaofeng was not present. Vice President Xia Zhixin had a bad attitude towards them. We can cooperate with anyone, but we won't cooperate with the Sang family. Not only that, he also made a phone appointment with people from Kursen Group in front of Sang Minglang. Everyone in Mingqing knows that Sanjia Hongyuan Group and Hanjia Kursen Group are rivals in the shopping mall, and their relationship has never been in conflict. Xia Zhixin's behavior is clearly a blatant provocation. As a result, there was a dispute and conflict between the two sides. Xia Zhixin accidentally fell and injured his head, but fortunately, his life was not in danger. Sang Qianqian, who has been silently listening, doesn't know what it feels like in his heart. I thought there would be no more problems if the Shen family didn't go bankrupt, but unexpectedly, this matter was still involved. Xia Zhixin's surname is Xia, so he should have a close relationship with Xia Sidong. He may be Xia Sidong's father. Otherwise, Shen Hanyu won't accompany Xia Sidong to the hospital in the rain this afternoon. Sang Minglang was very angry. Let's not say that Xia Zhixin dared to push his nose and face like this. Was it Shen Xiaofeng's instruction? Even if not, if Shen Xiaofeng really cooperates with the Han family, it would be too passive for us. He looked at Sang Pengcheng and said, Dad, I know you have shallow concerns and don't want to get into trouble with the Shen family, but since Shen Xiaofeng is not willing to cooperate, acquiring his company is inevitable. Sang Pengcheng's face was also somewhat solemn. As someone who has been involved in the business world for many years, how can he not know the pros and cons? He glanced at Sang Qianqian, who had remained silent all along. When she came just now, her clothes and hair were soaked in the rain. As soon as we met, she eagerly asked about the Shen family. He said that he no longer likes Shen Hanyu and has dropped his studies and is about to study abroad. But her actions made Sang Pengcheng feel whatever he thought. She decided to go abroad, not because she really let go of Shen Hanyu, but because she felt heartbroken after confessing that she had been rejected and wanted to stay away and heal her wounds alone. He, as a father, really feels heartbroken. Sang Qianqian sighed silently. All right, I'll go talk to Shen Xiaofeng myself tonight. Sang Minglang immediately opposed. Dad, just someone like Shen Xiaofeng, how could he make you condescend? Shen Family Company is just a small company with a scale of 20.30 people, while Hongyuan Group is one of the top large enterprises in China. With Sang Qianqian's position in the business world, it is like a bright moon to a firefly. How can Shen Xiaofeng be on par with his father? I can't say that. His ability to develop chip technology is also worth seeing. Sang Qianqian spoke and dialed the secretary's phone number. Soon, the secretary came over to reply, saying that Shen Xiaofeng was currently visiting Xia Zhixin in the hospital. Sang Qianqian asked his secretary to prepare a gift and got into the car with Sang Qianqian and Sang Minglang. He instructed the driver, send Sang Qianqian home first. Dad, can I go with you guys? I won't enter the ward, I'll wait outside for you and your brother. Okay, said Sang Qianqian in a soft voice. If the conversation fails and her father gets angry, she can still help the Shen family to some extent. Otherwise, with the swift and decisive abilities of my father and brother, the Shen family might have gone bankrupt by tomorrow morning. Sang Qianqian also guessed Sang Qianqian's intentions to some extent. She was simply afraid that he would trouble Shen Xiaofeng. Although he knew he shouldn't take her with him, cause Sang Qianqian, as a slave to his daughter, couldn't bear to face his daughter's demands and said, if you really want to go, just follow Dad. Sang Qianqian happily agreed, thank you Dad. Seeing his daughter's appearance, Sang Qianqian inexplicably felt a little sad. How much does this foolish girl like that kid from the Shen family? She still cares about the Shen family so much when she is rejected, afraid that he will make things difficult for the Shen family. Half an hour later. Sang Qianqian sat on a bench in the corridor of the inpatient ward. Although his face was calm, his heart was on the verge of collapse. She couldn't have imagined that Shen Hanyu and Xia Zhixin had not returned to school yet and were still staying in the hospital to take care of Xia Zhixin. She wished she could find a piece of tofu to kill herself. Why did her brain twitch? She thought she wanted to come to the hospital with her father, and even planned to hide outside the ward and quietly listen to the corner of the wall. Now it's okay, I can't hear it in the corner, and I have to face the two people I least want to face. The mulberry is as shallow as a deep abyss, as if sitting on a needle felt, suffering immensely. The agonizing pressure did not entirely come from Shen Hanyu, but also from herself. Her previous clothes got wet, and Sang Qianqian was afraid that she would get sick. He asked his secretary to quickly go to the nearby shopping mall to buy her a set of clothes to change. The secretary didn't know what she was thinking, but she actually bought a very pink fluffy princess dress with a blinding rhinestone sequin on it. Under the light, it could almost dazzle the eyes. It was not a big deal to change into this dress temporarily, but wearing this childish dress appeared in front of Shen Han Yu Xia Zhixin. Sang Qianqian really wanted to find a hole to burrow into. Not to mention the huge awkwardness, it's also extremely cold. The place where she sat was by the window at the end of the corridor. The wind blew in with raindrops, making her shiver all over, but she didn't dare to close the window. Because of the window, it was right next to Shen Hanyu. The corridor was very quiet, and a cold wind blew by. Sang Qianqian couldn't hold back and let out a big sneeze. Even Xia Zhixin coughed softly. Sang Qianqian took a sniff and was hesitating whether to wait in the car first. On the opposite bench, Shen Han, who had always had a cold expression, stood up and closed the window with his hand. He turned around, took off his coat, and Sang Qianqian's heart was pounding wildly. Shen Hanyu, what are you doing? The fact proved that Sang Qianqian had thought too much, and Shen Han calmly draped his clothes over Xia Zhixin. Sang Qianqian felt like a huge bright extra light bulb at the moment, intending to find an excuse to escape when the door to Xia Zhixin's ward was opened. Sang Minglang walked out from inside, with no emotion on his face. Shallow, Dad asked you to come in. Sang Qianqian was stunned and said, am I? Sang Minglang nodded and glared at Shen Hanyu, his tone cold and stiff, you come in too. Shen Hanyu was clearly also stunned. They were not talking about cooperation. Why did they ask him and Sang Qianqian to go in? End of this chapter. Chapter 7, I have a condition. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7, I have a condition. The two followed Sang Minglang into the ward. I saw Sang Pengcheng chatting and laughing with Shen Xiaofeng, and even Xia Zhixin in the hospital bed had a slight smile on his face. Obviously, the two sides had a good conversation. Mr. Shen has excellent business capabilities and lofty aspirations, which Mr. Sang truly admires. Sang Pengcheng praised, in time, your company will definitely become a leader in the communication field. Mr. Sang praised me. Listening to Mr. Sang's words really benefited me a lot. Shen Xiaofeng sincerely said, I used to hear a lot of people give high praise to Mr. Sang, but today I realize that rumors are not false, and there is nothing wrong with them. Mr. Sang is the role model of our generation in life and work. Sang Pengcheng smiled and said, if you're polite, don't say anything. If you need any help in the future, feel free to speak up. The Sang family will definitely do their best to help. It's okay if you don't cooperate, but as a friend, I've made a promise. Shen Xiaofeng repeatedly expressed his gratitude. Sang Qianqian heard it inexplicably, so this cooperation was not negotiated. So why are they still so happy? Sang Qianqian was in confusion. Shen Xiaofeng smiled and said to Shen Hanyu, Hanyu, I have some good news to tell you. Mr. Sang just said that he is willing to help contact famous doctors at home and abroad to consult with your mother. Shen Hanyu's mother suffered from severe heart failure and was bedridden for years. Despite seeking medical attention for many years, she was unable to cure it. Sangjia Hongyuan Group has a complex and huge industry, covering multiple fields such as communication, real estate, and healthcare, each of which is a leading benchmark in the industry. Especially in the medical field, Hongyuan Group has top-notch AI medical laboratories, bringing together the best research talents in the medical field. If Sang Pengcheng is willing to use the group's strength to help contact renowned domestic and foreign doctors for consultations, it would be a blessing in disguise. Shen Hanyu looked a bit moved and looked deeply at Sang Pengcheng, saying, Thank you, Mr. Sang. Sang Pengcheng looked up and down at Shen Hanyu, with a hint of appreciation in his eyes. He finally understood why his daughter liked him so much. I will arrange this consultation for your mother as soon as possible, at all costs, to cure her. However, I have one condition, said Sang Pengcheng with a smile. Shen Han's pupils shrank slightly, almost subconsciously glancing at Sang Qianqian. However, Sang Qianqian also looked confused and bewildered, clearly not knowing what her father was going to say. Shen Han asked in a deep voice, what conditions? 2 years ago, we had a genius boy in Mingcheng, who won the championship and runner-up in the World Olympic Mathematics and Physics competitions, and received offers from several well-known universities abroad. I always thought that boy had already gone abroad to study. If it weren't for meeting your father today, I wouldn't have known that the teenager was you, let alone that you stayed at a regular high school in China to take care of your mother, said Sang Pengcheng with some emotion in his words. He looked at Shen Hanyu with a meaningful gaze and said, My condition is that I hope you can study abroad and continue your studies. Shen Han's expression trembled slightly as he remained silent for a few seconds. May I ask Mr. Sang why he is helping us like this? There are 2 reasons. One is naturally not wanting to see talent buried. The other is, Sang Pengcheng smiled and pointed to Sang Qianqian, my daughter has been pampered since childhood and has not suffered much. She is going to study abroad soon, and I am worried about both her studies and life. If you can help me take care of my daughter, then I am truly grateful. His attitude is gentle and polite, completely free from the boss's airs, just like an ordinary father who asks others to take care of his daughter. His heart is full of punches and punches. Sang Qianqian couldn't believe that her father had worked so hard to create opportunities for her to get along with Shen Hanyu. She felt an inexplicable taste in her heart. Shen Hanyu didn't have many surprises. He seemed to have anticipated that Sang Pengcheng's request would be related to Sang Qianqian. He said calmly, "Mr. Sang is willing to do his best for my mother. I naturally dare not refuse this request. No need to trouble." Sang Qianqian walked up to Sang Pengcheng and said, "Dad, I'm such a big person. Who else should take care of me? Besides, Wen Su is still with me, so don't worry about me." Sang Pengcheng thought his daughter was shy and smiled. What's wrong with having one more person to take care of her? Hanyu is young and promising. If he is willing to help you, Dad can rest assured. Dad, you may have underestimated your daughter too much. Sang Qianqian flattened his mouth and said, "Just knowing how to praise others for their youth and achievements, is your daughter that bad?" Sang Pengcheng laughed heartily, rubbed her head, and doted on her with eyes full of love. "Not bad, not bad, my daughter is the best." The matter of taking care of it was interrupted by Sang Qianqian and passed like this. When leaving the hospital, Sang Pengcheng was in a good mood, and on the way back, he contacted his secretary to arrange a consultation. "Dad, why doesn't the Shen family want to cooperate with us?" Sang Qianqian asked, knowing that Shen Xiaofeng had such a good conversation with his father. Shen Xiaofeng is a very thoughtful person who aspires to create a domestic mobile phone brand, from chips to casings, without relying on any foreign technology. Sang Pengcheng admired Shen Xiaofeng very much. He has no intention of accepting any investment, nor does he want to cooperate with anyone. The meeting with the Han family was only initiated by Xia Zhixin, mainly to anger your brother. "Why are you angry with my brother?" Sang Qianqian was curious. Sang Pengcheng glanced at Sang Minglang and smiled. Xia Zhixin and Shen Xiaofeng have been close friends for many years. He blamed the Sang family for putting pressure on Mingqing High School and causing Shen Hanyu to drop out, so today he deliberately treated your brother poorly. Sang Qianqian suddenly realized that Xia Zhixin dared to express his feelings. This was to defend Shen Han against injustice. Sang Minglang frowned and said, "Even if the Shen family doesn't cooperate with the Han family, if they develop in the future, it will still be a threat to us." He has no fondness for the Shen family father and son, and neither in public nor in private, he wants to turn enemies into friends with them. Let's take a look at the fate of the Shen family. Shen Xiaofeng has great ambitions, it depends on whether he can seize the opportunity. If Shen Xiaofeng can really make national brands bigger and stronger, and go global, then Sang Pengcheng is willing to be outdone. Sang Pengcheng's handling of affairs is indeed in a thunderous style. 3 days later, a team of over 10 top doctors from both domestic and international sources conducted a comprehensive consultation with Shen Hanyu's mother. The treatment plan provided by the expert team is to perform a heart transplant as soon as possible. Sang Pengcheng used all his available strength and soon helped find a suitable heart transplant source, performing heart replacement surgery for Shen Hanyu's mother. The surgery was very successful, and Shen Xiao personally went to Hongyuan Group to thank Sang Pengcheng for it. Shen Xiaofeng came today and specifically asked about your study abroad school. Sang Pengcheng returned and told Sang Qianqian, he said Shen Hanyu will apply to the same university as you and try to take care of you as much as possible in the future. Sang Qian sat cross-legged on the sofa, holding ice cream and watching TV shows on his iPad. Upon hearing this, he coughed uncontrollably. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. How She Was Here. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. How She Was Here. Sang Pengcheng quickly came over to help her pat her back. After she felt a little better, she smiled and said, "Why are you so excited? Dad has some good news to tell you." Shen Xiaofeng said that if you are willing, you can wait for Shen Hanyu to complete the study abroad procedures and let the two of them go together. "Dad, I don't want to go to the same school as him, let alone go with him," said Sang Qianqian in silence. Sang Pengcheng couldn't believe it. You child, confessing failure is not a shameful thing. Emotions are things that are slowly cultivated. Only when there is a chance to get along can there be a chance to develop feelings. But I don't want to have any feelings for him. Dad, I really don't like him anymore, said Sang Qianqian seriously. Sang Pengcheng thought she was still in a fit of anger and coaxed her like a child, saying, okay. We don't like him at all, can we let him follow and like him in the future? Sang Qianqian said, I feel like I can't continue chatting with her father. She originally planned to stay at home for a few more days, spend more time with her father, and then report to school. But now, I guess I have to leave early. Listening to Sang Qianqian's plan to go abroad immediately, Wensu has no objections. I heard from Sister Qian, you can leave whenever you want. But Han Tiany's birthday party is tomorrow night, so we still have to attend, right? Han Tiany is a classmate of Sang Qianqian at an international school and the son of Han Shangrong, the CEO of Mingqing Science and Technology Group. Although Han Shangrong and Sang Pengcheng are not easy to deal with in the mall, the relationship between the two younger generations is quite good, especially since Han Tiany had previously pursued Sang Qianqian. Although they were rejected, they are still good friends with her. As we are about to go abroad, we will have fewer days to gather. Therefore, Sang Qianqian naturally needs to go to Han Tiany's birthday party. At dusk, the lawn of the Han family villa was bustling with people, and the lights were shining brightly like daylight. Han Tiany leaned confidently beside the white dining table, chatting with a group of fashionable young men and women. Seeing Sang Qianqian and Wensu from afar, Han Tiany hurriedly walked over and said, you two are really not righteous. You transfer to Mingqing High School without saying anything to me. Wensu put his hands in his pockets and spoke slowly, your news is behind schedule. The latest intelligence is that Sister Qian and I are going to study abroad soon. Han Tiany's face was full of disbelief and he said, what? Study abroad? Wensu shrugged and said, yes, the tickets are all booked and we will fly to the United States in a week. In a week. Han Tiany turned to Sang Qianqian in shock and said, Qianqian, what's going on here? Sang Qianqian pursed his lips and said, what am I doing? Do I still need to explain to you? Han Tiany scratched his head and said, of course not, but it's a bit unfair for you to take Wensu wherever you go and not me. Qian is my sister, who are you? Wensu picked up a green tea from the dining table and threw it into his mouth, feeling proud and provocative. Why should I take you? Han Tiany jumped up in anger and grabbed Wensu's neck, gritting his teeth and saying, Wensu, your skin is itching, isn't it? Wensu almost got stuck by Qingti and turned around to wrestle with Han Tiany. Alright, you two, stop messing around. Sang Qian stopped with a faint smile, and the two of them finally gave up. The butler came over and said something to Han Tiany. Han Tiany quickly said, my cousin called me back from overseas. I'll go pick it up and come back soon. Many of the people who came to attend Han Tiany's birthday banquet today were former classmates from international schools. Sang Qianqian had no intention of socializing and sat on a corner sofa drinking orange juice, with Wensu accompanying her. The two were chatting when a commotion came from the other end of the lawn, and a group of people gathered around them, not knowing what they were doing. Wensu climbed onto the sofa, leaning high, and looked around. He was surprised and said, Sister, why did Xia Sidong come? Sang Qianqian was not surprised, Xia Sidong. How could she be here? Xia Sidong somehow offended Ding Yaojia. Wensu observed for a while, then jumped off the sofa with a look of schadenfreude. There's a good show to watch now, he said. Ding Yaojia is also a classmate of Wensu and Sang Qianqian at an international school. Miss Ding is fierce and domineering, and if Xia Sidong gets into trouble with her, she will be at a loss. Sang Qianqian hurriedly pulled Wensu over, but still went too late. In the crowd, Ding Yaojia glared at Xia Sidong with a fierce tone and said, this cup of coffee is just a small lesson I'll teach you. Stay away from Tianyi in the future. Xia Sitong's hair was wet, and her white dress was stained with large coffee stains. She stood there at a loss, not daring to resist at all, but her eyes were already red. Sang Qianqian pushed aside the onlookers and squeezed in, pulling Xia Sitong to his side. Wensu, can I borrow my coat? Wensu understood Sang Qianqian's intention, but felt a little reluctant. Sister, my coat is very expensive. Sang Qianqian glanced at him and said, can you borrow it or not? If not, I'll find someone else. Wensu stopped talking and quickly took off his coat. Sang Qianqian draped his coat over Xia Sitong, covering her white skirt that had been soaked in coffee stains on her chest. Xia Sitong wiped her tears and whispered, thank you. Ding Yaojia was somewhat surprised and said, do you know her? Not just understanding. Apologize to my friend. Sang looked coldly at Ding Yaojia. Why did I apologize? It was she who seduced my boyfriend before I spilled her coffee. Ding Yaojia felt a little uneasy in her heart. If she had known that this bumpkin and Sang Qianqian were friends, she would have had some affection. Xia Sitong cried and defended, I don't have it. He and I are just relatives. Don't tease me, Tianyi would have relatives like you. Don't you even look like this? Does the total cost of your whole body add up to over 1,000 yuan? Ding Yaojia said contemptuously, moreover, if you say there is no seduction, then there is no seduction. Do you think I am blind? I saw you holding Tianyi's waist with my own eyes, lying in someone's arms and unable to come down. Sang Qianqian was slightly stunned, Xia Sitong and Han Tianyi. How could it be? A mocking smile appeared on Wensu's face. Sister Qian, it seems that Miss Xia has a story. Let's not meddle in our affairs. Don't talk. Sang Qianqian glared at Wensu and took out his phone to call Han Tianyi. Han Tianyi, have you finished answering the phone? Come over as soon as you finish. Ding Yaojia didn't know what medicine she was selling in her gourd, but when Han Tianyi arrived, she was not afraid either. She was originally Han Tianyi's girlfriend, okay. A few days ago, Han Tianyi just confessed to her and gave her 999 roses. What's going on? Han Tianyi ran all the way, panting slightly. Seeing the situation inside the encirclement, he was stunned and said, what's wrong with you? Sang lightly pointed to Xia Sitong and said, your girlfriend said Sitong seduced you and spilled coffee all over her. Han Tianyi's expression stiffened and he said angrily, Ding Yaojia, what are you doing? Xia Sitong is a relative of my family and she slipped. I helped her down. What's wrong? What's seduction? You can't speak, so you don't have to say it. Sang Qianqian was stunned. Xia Sitong, are you really a relative of Han Tianyi? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Encounter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Encounter. Ding Yaojia was extremely embarrassed. She thought Xia Sitong, who was so poor, was the daughter of a servant in the Han family, but she didn't expect she was actually a relative of Han Tianyi. Tianyi, it's not like I said, you can't catch up with my sister Qian, so you shouldn't give up on yourself. Just find a girlfriend, right? When Su picked up the pot without opening it, it was like intentionally cutting a knife. Han Tianyi frowned and said, I don't have a girlfriend. When Su pointed to Ding Yaojia, fearing that the world would not be chaotic. She said you were her boyfriend, he said, not now. Han Tianyi pointed in the direction of the villa gate with a dark face and said, Ding Yaojia, you are not welcome here. Now, immediately get out of here. Ding Yaojia's face turned pale and blue, but she was not the one to be bullied. Just go away, go away. Han Tianyi, don't regret it. She let out a cold snort and walked away on Hentian Gao. Han Tianyi glanced at Xia Sitong and felt a bit sorry. Sorry, I apologize to you on behalf of Ding Yaojia. Xia Sitong shook her head with tears in her eyes, and Sang Qianqian said, Sitong's clothes are wet. You can find clean clothes for her to change. Han Tianyi quickly asked someone to arrange, and a few people accompanied Xia Sidong to take a shower and change clothes. When Xia Sidong entered the room, Wen Su curiously said, "Where did Xia Sidong slip? How could she hug your waist?" On the rockery pavilion, Han Tianyi said with a hint of unease on his face, "The Han family garden is very large, with mountains and water in it, and a welcoming pavilion on the mountain." Han Tianyi took Xia Sidong to see the scenery, and when she came down from the rockery, Xia Sidong slipped and Han Tianyi easily caught her. Xia Sidong was a bit afraid of heights and dared not let go. Han Tianyi almost half hugged her as she descended from the mountain, but to her surprise, Ding Aojia watched this scene from a distance. "Then you really suffered it on your own." Wen Su showed no sympathy at all and said, "You deserve to be so attentive to other women even if you have a girlfriend." Han Tianyi was very depressed. "It wasn't because my dad asked me to take Xia Sidong around that I brought her up." "Is Xia Sidong really your relative?" Wen Su asked. "Well, a distant relative who hasn't been in contact for 800 years. My dad insisted on inviting her and her dad to my birthday party." Han Tianyi was also puzzled when he said this. "I really don't understand why my dad looks at her dad differently. It's just a distant relative, as for that." Sang Qianqian instinctively remembered Xia Zhixin, the father of Xia Sidong, who had previously announced in front of his brother that he wanted to cooperate with the Han family. Unexpectedly, Xia Zhixin and the Han family still have a distant relationship. Wen Su was very gossipy. "So what's going on between you and Ding Aojia?" "I was just joking with her, who would have thought she could be such a demon." Han Tianyi felt regretful when he remembered this matter. A few days ago, many people went to play together. He drank too much and the people next to him started making noise. He had a brainstorm and bought 999 roses for her. He was also posted on Ding Aojia's social media, and it was too late for him to wake up and regret it. "Don't explain. I don't know you yet." Wen Su sneered, "What a joke. You're just saying you slept recklessly after drinking, and neither Sister Qian nor I were surprised." Han Tianyi's handsome face rarely turned red. "Stop talking nonsense, am I that kind of person? I have principles," he said. "Kissing is kissing, but sleeping is not necessary. Come on, you still have less promiscuous debt." Wen Su raised his eyebrows and said, "Do you think you're me? I've been through a myriad of flowers, and leaves don't touch me. Hee, it's really making people laugh their teeth out. Are you trying to get involved in something that's not good?" Sang Qianqian didn't want to hear them argue, so he got up and went to the bathroom. She was not very familiar with the Han family villa and only found it after circling around. "When I returned, I accidentally heard a faint voice coming from the room behind a floor-to-ceiling screen, vaguely mentioning the Sang family." Sang Qianqian's heart twitched slightly as he walked over lightly and glanced inside through the crack in the door. Two people sat opposite each other in the room. One was Han Shangrong, the father of Han Tianyi, and the other was actually Xia Sidong's father, Xia Zhixin. "Mr. Han, I'm really sorry, but that's the situation. Xiaofeng is unwilling to accept your investment and doesn't want to cooperate with you." Xia Zhixin looked ashamed and said, "Xiaofeng is quite stubborn, and I can't convince him. But rest assured, even if he doesn't cooperate with you, he will never cooperate with the Sang family. But I heard that Sang Pengcheng helped Shen Xiaofeng find many well-known doctors to consult his wife for surgery for free." Han Shangrong had a smile on his face, but his gaze was somewhat gloomy. "If Shen Xiaofeng's wife is really cured, it's hard to guarantee that he won't change his mind," he said. "Mr. Han can rest assured that I have known Xiaofeng for many years, and his decision will not change. Xiaofeng doesn't want to rely on any investment. He wants to expand his mobile phone brand and will never cooperate with the Sang family," Xia Zhixin said with a chest full of assurance. "Really, then I underestimated Shen Xiaofeng." Han Shangrong's eyes flickered and he smiled, "But as long as he doesn't cooperate with the Sang family, it's just as good." Sang Qianqian had no intention of listening anymore and left with a rapid heartbeat. When she arrived at the living room, she met Han Tianyi and a few others coming out. Xia Sitong had already changed her clothes, and she spoke awkwardly, "I have something else to do and I want to go back early. Do you want me to call your dad?" Han Tianyi didn't try to persuade him. Xia Sitong hesitated for a moment and said, "No need, I'll reply first. I'll just send him a message." Xia Zhixin said she has something to talk about with Han Xiangrong today, but she still won't disturb her. "Then I'll arrange a car to see you off," Han Tianyi said as he went to find the butler. Sang Qianqian said, "Let me see her off. I happen to want to go back early too." When Su and Han Tianyi almost spoke in unison, "How can that work? I feel a little uncomfortable in my stomach and want to go home and rest." Sang Qianqian said to his aunt, feeling a bit uncomfortable. When Su and Han Tianyi felt helpless, but they could only send Sang Qianqian and Xia Sitong into the car. In the car, Xia Sitong lowered her head all the way and only whispered, "Thank you," when getting off the car, then walked quickly. Sang Qianqian is both funny and puzzled. She's not as scary as Ding Yaojia, right? Why does Xia Sitong always face her like a mouse seeing a cat? Just as he was about to instruct the driver to drive, he found a mobile phone in the back seat. Xia Sitong dropped the phone into the car. She quickly got off the car and entered the community to chase Xia Sitong. At this moment, the night is getting darker, and the shadows of the trees are flickering in the community, with dim lighting. Sang Qianqian chased after her all the way, not too slow, but she didn't even look at Xia Sitong's figure. In the midst of confusion, he heard a whimpering sound from the bushes in the nearby small forest. Sang Qianqian strode over and saw a scene in the bushes, his mind racing with blood. Xia Sitong was pressed to the ground by a man, her mouth covered, and she was struggling hard. In a hurry, Sang Qianqian rushed over and used his phone to hit the person's head several times. The person felt pain and released Xia Sitong. Sang Qianqian took the opportunity to grab her and said, "Let's go. Stinky girl, look where you're going." That man must have been drunk, his mouth full of alcohol and cursing as he chased towards them. Sang Qianqian dared not turn back and ran desperately with Xia Sitong. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Suffering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Suffering. Perhaps due to being too panicked and scared, Xia Sitong stumbled and fell, while Sang Qianqian was extremely anxious and bent down to help. In just a moment, the drunken man had already chased after Xia Sitong and reached out to grab her clothes. Xia Sitong screamed loudly, and Sang Qianqian could only repeat his old trick, throwing his phone towards the drunken man's face with force. The drunken man was hit in the eye, in excruciating pain. He ignored Xia Sitong and rushed towards Sang Qianqian like a madman. Sang Qianqian couldn't dodge and was knocked down by the drunken man, falling heavily to the ground. Her head hit the iron leg of the nearby bench, and a golden star shot out in front of her. Her palm also felt a sharp pain, as if it had been cut by something sharp. Xia Sitong's legs were so weak that she could hardly stand. Trembling, she quickly dialed a phone number and cried for help, "Brother Hanyu, Sang Qianqian and I are downstairs. You, come down quickly. Stinky girl, I asked you to hit me." The drunkard had already held down Sang Qianqian and cursed fiercely, "See if I don't kill you today." At first glance, facing her face, the drunken man was clearly stunned, his gaze sweeping up and down her face and collarbone, with an undisguised desire. Due to attending Han Tianyi's birthday banquet today, Sang Qianqian wore a V-neck starry sky gradient blue dress, with most of her collarbones exposed. The drunkard's eyes showed a drooling expression, and he started tearing at her skirt. Sang Qianqian struggled desperately, almost breaking free. The drunkard was angry and tightly grabbed her neck. Sang had shallow breathing difficulties, his cheeks turned red, and his consciousness was somewhat confused. Suddenly, the heavy pressure on his body suddenly lightened, and the drunken man was pulled away by someone. Then he let out a scream like killing a pig. Sang Qianqian gasped for breath, calmed down, and looked towards the direction where the screams came from. Under the dim yellow road lights, a tall and slender figure stood against the light, mercilessly kicking the drunkard with its foot raised. Sang Qianqian's heart skipped a beat. Shen Hanyu. Does he and Xia Sidong live in the same community? Shen Hanyu quickly restrained the drunkard and pulled the belt around his waist, tying his hands and feet together. Xia Sidong has already reported to the police and tearfully told Shen Hanyu about the general process. Just now, Sang Qianqian was secretly laughing at Xia Sidong. When he saw himself, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. At this moment, she realized that she was not much stronger than Xia Sidong. When she saw Shen Hanyu, her nerves were already tense all over. My driver is still waiting for me outside. Since it's okay now, I'll leave first. Sang Qianqian turned around and wanted to run. We can't leave yet, we have to wait for the police to come. Shen Han's pitch-black eyes brushed over Sang Qianqian's right hand, which was dripping with blood. Is your hand injured? Sang Qianqian instinctively hid his hand behind him and said, a little injury, it's okay. Shen Han frowned slightly and leaned forward to grab her wrist, pulling it out. The sensation of Shen Hanyu gripping her wrist was like ice and fire, and Sang Qianqian's whole body stiffened. She stuttered, really, it's really okay. Shen Han said in a cold voice, open your hands. Sang Qianqian reluctantly released his fist. The originally fair palm was cut through, and the wound was not too deep, but blood flowed a lot, dripping down through the gaps between the fingers. Xia Sidong, don't look away, she's a bit afraid to look. Miss, why are you injured? At this moment, the driver of the Sang family waited for Sang Qianqian to come and came in to check the situation. He was startled when he saw Sang Qianqian's injury and said, Miss, I'll take you to the hospital now. Sang Qianqian refused, it's not a big deal, just go back and bandage it. The driver apologized, I'm sorry, Mississippi. It was my negligence that I didn't protect Mississippi. Sang Qianqian shook his head and said, it's nothing to do with you. It was her misfortune to meet a crazy drunk. Shen Hanyu glanced at Sang Qianqian and said, Sidong has some trauma medicine at home. You can simply bandage it first. As soon as Sang Qianqian was about to refuse, the driver repeatedly expressed gratitude, thank you very much. Miss, please go handle it quickly. At least stop the bleeding first. Sang Qianqian had no choice but to follow Xia Sidong to her house. To her surprise, Shen Hanyu also came along. Is it not reassuring that Xia Sidong is alone with her or something? Sang Qianqian felt puzzled and embarrassed to ask. Xia Sidong found the medicine box, and Shen Hanyu took it over, skillfully taking out medical alcohol, bandages, and trauma medicine. Seeing his prepared posture, Sang Qianqian was quite surprised and said, it's better to let Sidong help me. She faints from blood, Shen Han said calmly. Sang Qianqian felt like crying without tears. So is this the reason why Shen Hanyu also followed upstairs? If I had known she wouldn't have come. When the cold disinfectant alcohol was applied to the wound, Sang Qian felt so painful that he took a cold breath and his face twisted. Shen Han glanced at her and said, it's almost over, hold on a bit. Although the tone was indifferent, the movements were much gentler. Sang Qianqian dared not respond, like a wooden person, afraid to move. The wound was finally treated, and she breathed a sigh of relief as she was about to get up. Shen Hanyu glanced at her and said, there's also a forehead. Sang lightly touched her forehead, and a pigeon egg-sized lump protruded, which was very painful. It should be red and swollen, so she had no choice but to sit down again. At this moment, the piercing sound of police sirens came from outside the window, and Xia Sidong's phone also rang at the same time. After saying a few words, Xia Sidong hung up the phone and said, Brother Hanyu, the police are here. Let me explain the situation to them. Shen Hanyu nodded and said, "Okay, you go down first. We'll come over soon." Xia Sitong quickly left, and the room was so quiet that needles could be heard falling. Shen Han leaned down slightly and applied trauma medicine to Sang Qianqian's forehead. The distance between the two was too close, so close that we could hear each other's breathing. Sang Qianqian's whole body was extremely stiff, as if suffering from torture. She had never felt that time passed so slowly, clearly just a short minute or two, but to her, it seemed like centuries had passed, and her palms were already soaked. "All right." The two cold words fell in her ear, and Sang Qianqian felt relieved. She stood up and prepared to walk outside. She didn't pay any attention to her feet and stumbled over the medicine box. In the moment when Sang Qianqian's steady and solid arms supported her, he instinctively raised his eyes and met Shen Han's pitch-black eyes. She was instantly shocked and rushed out of the distance like a rabbit in panic. She hastily knocked down the medicine boxes under her feet, spilling medicine all over the floor. Shen Han frowned slightly and said, "What's wrong?" Sang Qianqian quickly squatted down to pick up something. "No, nothing." These three words were unconvincing, and Shen Hanyu stared at her, obviously not believing that she was really nothing. Fortunately, the sudden ringing of the phone relieved the embarrassment in this room. It was Xia Sitong who called, "Brother Hanyu, the police asked me and the driver uncle to go to the police station to take notes first. You can come directly to the police station later. The police station is not far, it only takes 7 or 8 minutes to walk by." Sang Qianqian dared not follow Shen Han too closely, but also dared not fall too far. Behind him remained silent, and Shen Hanyu couldn't help but stop and turned his head to look at Sang Qianqian. End of this chapter.